Hello everyone. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to hear more meaningful stories.
In the small, dusty village of Amiri, where the red sand painted every footpath and hunger lingered in the corners of many homes, lived a young girl named Gloria. At just 22 years old, her eyes carried the weight of 100 lifetimes, a lifetime marked by sorrow, hardship, and silent suffering. 5 years had passed since her mother's untimely death, and ever since, Gloria had known no peace. Her father, Mr. Thomas, had once been a kind and hardworking farmer, but now he was a shadow of his former self, a cruel, drunken man whose temper flared at the smallest of provocations. As if that wasn't enough, he had married Mrs. Grace, a wicked woman who despised Gloria with all her heart. Every day, Gloria was burdened with endless chores, cooking, fetching firewood, sweeping the compound, and working the farm from dawn until dusk. She slept with an empty stomach, her body aching from the exhaustion. The villagers pitied her, but no one dared to speak out. No one was brave enough to face Mr. Thomas's wrath. Gloria's heart ached for something more than this life of endless labor and suffering, but there seemed to be no escape. The once familiar paths of her childhood had turned into roads of pain, and even in the midst of the red dust that enveloped her world, she saw no hope. In the dark corners of her soul, a quiet, desperate prayer echoed, "Please, God, give me peace." Gloria's life was a relentless cycle of torment, each day bleeding into the next with no end in sight. The harsh demands of her father and stepmother were unyielding, leaving her no room to breathe. From the moment the first light of dawn touched the earth, she was on her feet, cooking, cleaning, and working the farm. Her hands were raw from the constant labor, and her body, once full of youthful energy, now felt like an old woman's. The meager meals she prepared were barely enough to satisfy the hunger gnawing at her stomach. Every day she woke up, tired and sore, only to face another day of servitude. Mrs. Grace made sure to remind her, in the cruelest ways, that Gloria was nothing more than a burden, a mouth to feed, an unwanted presence in the house. The constant bickering between her father and stepmother only made things worse. There was no kindness, no compassion in the air, just the oppressive weight of resentment and bitterness. Gloria's heart hardened with each passing day, yet her spirit refused to break completely. She had learned to endure, to keep her head down and perform her duties without complaint, though the silent ache in her chest grew louder with every day that passed. The villagers would glance at her with pity in their eyes, but none dared to stand up for her. The fear of Mr. Thomas's wrath hung heavy over the village like a dark cloud. Gloria was trapped in a world where her worth was measured by her ability to serve, and the thought of escape felt like a distant, unreachable dream. Yet, beneath the weight of her suffering, there remained a flicker of hope, a silent yearning for something better, though she didn't know what it might look like. One scorching afternoon, as Gloria toiled under the merciless sun, a stranger appeared in the village. His name was Henry, a young man from the city, and although his clothes were worn and his shoes full of holes, there was something about him that caught Gloria's attention. His eyes, sharp and observant, held a quiet determination. For the past 3 months, he had been working for her father, laboring on the farm like an animal, clearing the thick bushes, hauling heavy sacks of produce from sunrise to sunset. Yet, despite his tireless efforts, Mr. Thomas had failed to pay him, continually offering empty promises. Next week, he would say, "Tomorrow, I'll pay you when I sell something." But that day never came. Henry's patience wore thin as the days stretched into weeks, and the frustration in his chest grew. Finally, his anger reached its boiling point. One afternoon, after another day of grueling work, he approached Mr. Thomas with fire in his eyes. "Sir, I need my money today," Henry said, his voice firm but weary. Mr. Thomas scratched his head and turned, his gaze landing on Gloria as she swept the dirt from the compound. A cruel smirk spread across his face. "You want your payment?" he sneered. Henry nodded, his jaw clenched. "Then take her." Mr. Thomas laughed, pointing at his daughter. "Take her instead. She's good for nothing. Take her to the city. That'll be your payment." Henry was taken aback, staring at Mr. Thomas, unable to process the words. Gloria, stunned and speechless, dropped the broom from her hands. The pain in her chest was unbearable as she looked at her father, begging him with her eyes. "Daddy, please, don't," she whispered, but he turned away, dismissing her like she was nothing. Her world crumbled around her. She dropped to her knees, tears falling from her eyes, but no one cared. No one reached out to stop her. In that moment, Henry's heart softened as he saw the brokenness in her, the silent strength beneath her pain. And though he didn't fully understand why, he agreed. "I'll take her," he said quietly, and just like that, Gloria's life changed forever. The air was thick with tension as Henry stood in front of Gloria, her heart racing, her knees weak beneath her. She couldn't comprehend the words that had just fallen from her father's lips, couldn't process the cruelty that had been thrust upon her so suddenly. She had always known her life was hard, but this was a betrayal, a gut-wrenching rejection. Her father, the man who had once been the protector of her world, had sold her off like an unwanted object. "Please, Daddy, don't do this," Gloria pleaded, her voice trembling as she looked into her father's eyes, hoping to see some trace of the man who had loved her once. But Mr. Thomas only scowled, his face hard and unyielding. "Shut up, girl," he yelled, his voice cutting through the air like a whip. "You should be grateful. Someone actually wants you. Go with him. It's your only worth." Henry's eyes softened with a mix of confusion and pity as he watched Gloria break, her hands trembling as she wiped her tears. Her world had just shattered, and there was nothing left but an unbearable silence, the kind that presses down on you and makes it hard to breathe. But amidst the chaos, there was a strange feeling rising inside Henry, a sense of responsibility, a desire to offer her something different, something better. He hadn't expected this. He hadn't come here to take a woman, but now that he had been given her, he would not abandon her like this. Gloria stood there, her body frozen, her heart shattering with every word her father said. Without another glance, Henry took a step forward, and almost mechanically, she followed him. There was no warmth, no goodbye, no comforting hug. Only a heavy silence that followed her like a shadow as she walked away from the only home she had ever known, the only life she had ever known. The weight of the unknown hung heavy in the air as they left, and the world outside the compound felt more foreign than ever before. Gloria's heart pounded in her chest as she followed Henry through the dusty roads, her footsteps heavy with the weight of the life she was leaving behind. She glanced over her shoulder once, the small house, her father's cruel face, and the cold indifference of Mrs. Grace, all fading into the distance. A strange mixture of relief and sorrow settled in her heart, but the sorrow was stronger. How could she feel relief when her own father had given her away so easily? It was as though she no longer existed in his world, a world she had tried so hard to belong to. She clutched the small black bag containing everything she had left, fragments of her old life now reduced to a few meager possessions. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the landscape, but there was no comfort in the fading light. Her mind raced with questions. What awaited her in the city? Would Henry be kind? Or was he just another cruel man pretending to offer her a chance at something better? The bus ride to the city was long and uncomfortable, every mile taking her further away from the familiar ache of her village, but it also pulled her deeper into the unknown. The seats were hard, the air stuffy, and she sat by the window, her gaze fixed on the passing scenery, her mind adrift in a sea of uncertainty. The towns blurred by, the trees, the endless stretch of dusty roads. Everything felt like a dream, like something that wasn't really happening. She kept her head low, her heart aching with the knowledge that she was truly alone now, that no one would come to save her. Henry remained silent beside her, staring out of the window with a look of deep thought, his brow furrowed. Occasionally he would glance at her, but his gaze would quickly turn away, as if he were struggling with some internal battle of his own. Gloria wanted to speak, to ask him what this was all about, what he truly wanted from her, but the words caught in her throat. She didn't have the energy for questions, only for the quiet prayer she whispered over and over in her heart. "Please, let this be different. Please, don't let this man be like my father." She closed her eyes, letting the sound of the bus's engine lull her into a restless sleep, her dreams filled with fear, hope, and the uncertain promise of a future she couldn't yet understand. The city was like nothing Gloria had ever seen before. As the bus pulled into the heart of the bustling metropolis, her eyes widened in wonder and disbelief. Towering buildings stretched towards the sky, their glass facades shimmering under the bright lights. The streets were alive with movement. People hurried past, cars zoomed by, and the noise was overwhelming, a constant hum of life that felt both exciting and terrifying. Gloria gripped her bag tightly, trying not to show how lost she felt in this overwhelming new world. They took a small tricycle down a quiet street, far removed from the chaos of the city's center. The air here felt different, cooler, calmer, and the further they went, the more peaceful it became. They stopped in front of a large black gate, which Henry knocked on. Gloria's heart beat faster as she looked up at the impressive compound before her. The gate creaked open slowly, and Gloria couldn't help but gasp. It was unlike anything she had ever imagined. Lush gardens with neatly trimmed flowers lined the pathway, and in the distance she could see a large white house, gleaming under the sunlight like something out of a dream. Henry led her down the path to a smaller building at the back of the compound. It wasn't as grand as the main house, but to Gloria, it felt like a sanctuary. The small house was clean and neat, with a cozy little sitting room, a kitchen, and a bedroom. The air inside was fresh, and Gloria couldn't help but notice the absence of dust, the absence of the weight that had hung over her for so long. Henry smiled at her, his voice gentle. "This is where I live," he said. "I just got a job as a security guard here. The owner of the house is very kind, and she gave me this place to stay for free." For the first time in a long while, Gloria felt something she hadn't known in years: peace. The bed was soft, the room was quiet, and there were no angry voices, no fear of punishment. She felt safe here. The walls of the small house were nothing compared to the crumbling walls of her old home. But in that moment, this small room felt like a palace. It wasn't much, but it was hers, and for the first time in ages, Gloria allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, her life was finally starting to change. She sat on the bed, looking around the room with a faint smile tugging at her lips. "If this is God's purpose for me," she whispered softly, "then so be it." The next morning, Gloria awoke to the smell of something delicious wafting through the small house. The soft rays of the sun filtered through the window, casting a gentle glow on the room. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, she woke without the gnawing weight of dread in her chest. The air was peaceful, still. She stretched her arms lazily, taking in the serenity around her. Her heart felt lighter as she stood up, her bare feet brushing against the smooth floor. There were no loud voices, no shouting, no oppressive silence, just the quiet hum of a new beginning. Gloria stepped into the kitchen where Henry stood, humming softly as he flipped something in a frying pan. His movements were confident, as though this simple act of preparing breakfast had become a ritual of calm. When he saw her, he turned with a warm smile. "Good morning, Gloria," he greeted her, his voice gentle and full of warmth. "I made breakfast. Hope you slept well." Gloria nodded, still absorbing the calmness of it all. "Yes, like a baby," she replied softly. Her voice cracked just slightly as she let herself smile for the first time in a long while. She watched as Henry set the table, the simple act of sharing a meal feeling like the most natural thing in the world. There were no harsh commands, no demands, just the shared, peaceful silence between them as they sat down to eat. After breakfast, Henry turned to her with a gleam in his eyes. "Get dressed. I want you to meet someone." Gloria raised an eyebrow, curiosity piqued. "Who?" she asked, but Henry just smiled, his face enigmatic. "You'll see. Just wear something simple and neat." Her heart fluttered with anticipation as she went into the room to change. The soft gown Henry had bought for her hung loosely on her body, and for the first time in a long time, she felt beautiful in her own skin. As she brushed her hair, Gloria caught her reflection in the mirror. Her face looked different, softer, more hopeful than it had in years. When she emerged, Henry was waiting for her with that same quiet smile. Together, they walked to the main house, and as they reached the entrance, the door swung open, revealing a woman with an elegant yet welcoming air. Gloria's heart skipped a beat as she took in the warmth of the moment. Everything was different now. Everything was changing. Gloria stepped into the main house, her heart racing with a mix of excitement and nervousness. The living room before her was everything she had never dreamed of: bright, airy, and impeccably neat. The floors gleamed under the soft light that filtered through the large windows, and the furniture was arranged with such precision that it looked like something out of a magazine. The scent of fresh flowers and clean linens hung in the air, and Gloria couldn't help but feel like she had stepped into a different world altogether. This was nothing like the cramped, dusty house she had left behind, where chaos and harshness were the norm. Here, everything was calm, elegant, and kind. The woman who had greeted them earlier, Mrs. Walker, stood by the doorway, her eyes warm and welcoming. She smiled at Gloria, her gaze filled with something Gloria couldn't quite place. Appreciation? Understanding? It was as if Mrs. Walker could see beyond her tired eyes, beyond the years of hardship that had carved themselves into her features. "Come in, my dear," Mrs. Walker said softly, her voice like honey. "Don't just stand there. You're welcome here." Gloria hesitated for a moment, unsure of her place in this pristine world. But then, something in Mrs. Walker's gentle demeanor made her feel at ease. She stepped forward and allowed herself to be enveloped in the warmth of the house. The decor was simple but sophisticated, everything in its right place. As they walked deeper into the house, Mrs. Walker introduced her to the space with a kind gesture. "This house is big enough for peace," she said with a smile, her eyes gleaming with a kindness that Gloria had never known. "If you need anything, don't hesitate to ask. You're part of this house now." The words settled over Gloria like a blanket, soothing her raw nerves. No one had ever spoken to her with such gentleness, with such respect. She smiled shyly, her heart full of a quiet joy she hadn't allowed herself to feel in so long. For the first time in years, Gloria felt like she mattered, like she was seen. Mrs. Walker's words were a balm to her soul, and she finally allowed herself to believe, just for a moment, that maybe, just maybe, she had found a place where she could truly belong. Days passed, and Gloria's life seemed to settle into a rhythm. The peaceful stillness of her new home, a sharp contrast to the chaos she had left behind. She spent her mornings helping Mrs. Walker in the kitchen, learning new recipes and methods, her confidence growing with each passing day. But it wasn't just the work that changed her. It was the kindness in every small gesture, the way Mrs. Walker treated her not as an outsider, but as someone worthy of respect and care. Gloria could hardly believe it. How had she gone from being dismissed, neglected, and unloved to being embraced so wholeheartedly? One afternoon, as she was chopping vegetables in the kitchen, Mrs. Walker called her over with a smile. Gloria wiped her hands and walked toward her, curiosity stirring in her chest. Mrs. Walker patted the seat beside her, inviting Gloria to sit. "Gloria, my dear," she said, her voice full of warmth. "I've been thinking about you." Gloria sat down, slightly nervous, unsure of what Mrs. Walker was going to say. "You've been such a help around here, and you've proven yourself to be hardworking, humble, and full of kindness." Gloria blushed, not used to hearing such words. Mrs. Walker continued, her eyes shining. "My cook has left to be with her family overseas, and I need someone I can trust to take her place. I've been watching you, Gloria, and I believe you are the right person." Gloria's breath caught in her throat. Could this really be happening? Her dreams of earning money, of standing on her own 2 feet, were starting to take shape. "You? You want me to be your cook?" she asked, her voice soft but filled with wonder. Mrs. Walker smiled warmly. "Yes, I think you are more than capable, and I'll pay you for your work. You'll be compensated well for your time and effort." Tears filled Gloria's eyes as she looked at the kind woman before her. She hadn't expected this, hadn't dared to dream it. She had never known a life where she was valued, where her hard work was seen as something precious. Mrs. Walker's offer wasn't just a job, it was a lifeline, a way out of the poverty that had defined her for so long. "Thank you," Gloria whispered, her voice trembling. "Thank you so much." Mrs. Walker smiled and patted her hand gently. "You deserve it, Gloria. And remember, this is just the beginning. You've got a bright future ahead of you." Gloria felt a warmth spread through her chest, a lightness she hadn't felt in years. For the first time, she believed it. She was worthy of more, and she was ready to take the next step. Life was beginning to look up for Gloria, and with each passing day, the weight that had burdened her for so long seemed to lift a little more. She threw herself into her work, learning new recipes and perfecting dishes for Mrs. Walker, who had become like a mother to her. Gloria found joy in the simple tasks, her heart swelling with a sense of pride that had once felt impossible. As she moved through the days, she started to believe that perhaps she could build a life here, a life of her own, where she wasn't defined by her past, but by the strength she had found within herself. But as the days passed, there was one thing Gloria couldn't shake from her mind: her dream of going to school, of continuing the education that had been abruptly cut short years ago. She had never forgotten the longing she'd always carried, the desire to learn, to grow beyond the walls of her village, beyond the constraints that had kept her tethered to a life of hardship. And now, in this new chapter, she wanted to chase that dream. One afternoon, after she had finished helping Mrs. Walker in the kitchen, Gloria found herself standing by the window, looking out at the garden. The air was fresh, and the soft rustling of the leaves calmed her thoughts. She turned to Mrs. Walker, who had followed her into the room, a gentle smile on her face. "Mrs. Walker, I've been thinking." Gloria began, her voice soft but steady. "I want to go to school. I want to finish my education and go to university." Mrs. Walker's eyes lit up with genuine excitement. "You want to go to university?" she asked, as though the very thought made her heart soar. Gloria nodded, her gaze determined. "Yes, I stopped after secondary school because of my family's situation, but I've always loved learning. I want to go back." The warmth in Mrs. Walker's smile grew even wider. She stepped closer and took Gloria's hands in hers. "My dear," she said, her voice full of pride, "that's a beautiful dream. I'm so proud of you, and I'll help you make it come true, whatever it takes." Tears welled in Gloria's eyes as she squeezed Mrs. Walker's hands. This woman, who had shown her nothing but kindness, had now become the catalyst for Gloria's future. She wasn't just giving her a place to stay, a job, or comfort. She was giving her the chance to become something more, something she had always believed she could be but never thought possible. "Thank you," Gloria whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. "Thank you for believing in me." Mrs. Walker smiled softly, brushing a tear from Gloria's cheek. "You don't need to thank me, my dear. You've earned this. You deserve it." For the first time in years, Gloria felt truly hopeful, her heart filled with the promise of a future that was finally within her reach.